I recently watched Inside Out 2, and it was pretty disappointing. Of all the Pixar films, I think Inside Out has the most interesting concept, and I thought they pulled it off in a very interesting and unique way in the first movie. It had like these little mascotty character designs and a very expansive world that was fun to explore. Creating a fantasy world from the ground up that's completely unique to anything in the genre is difficult to pull off, and can sometimes be very, so random.
Thank you for showing me the silliness of my ways, Tim. I formally declare an end to the rule. And all rules for that matter. No more rules.
But when it's played straight, it's pretty fun and immersive. Concepts like memories as little glass balls are just things you have to accept in the Inside Out universe, and it doesn't try to baby you about it, even though it's a kids movie. It's refreshing. The concept itself is not anything particularly new, but I think the little people controlling our mind idea has probably been done in my favorite way here. Like, as much as I love Yumi's cells, it was quite different to tell the cells in that comic apart sometimes, and it was kind of just a barren wasteland, like a desert. In the first movie, it's clear that they consulted actual psychologists about concepts on how the mind works and were able to then visualize them in interesting ways. I want to preface this by saying I was really excited for this movie. It was one of the few Pixar franchises where a sequel felt inevitable. Obviously, we were going to see Riley grow up and her mind changing as well, so we'll get more expansive locations, more emotions, more islands. There's a lot of creativity that can go into someone growing up and becoming a more complicated person than when they were 11 years old. But we didn't get anything much for the sequel. Most of the new places the emotions go to are places we've already been to, except this one new place that creates the sense of self. I really like this one though. Thought it was pretty. For the first movie, I always thought it was cute when they had a train of thought as a physical vehicle the characters traveled in. But in this movie, they literalized so many more metaphors like this. We have brainstorm, bottling up emotions, a sarcasm. After a while, it just becomes tiring and not fun. I think the one I liked was when the emotions sent things they didn't want to deal with to the back of Riley's mind. I thought that was clever. After a while, it feels like they just searched up a bunch of emotion-related idioms and thought they were being so smart about it. I can't wait for Inside Out 3, where there's a pun about something to do with thinking outside the box. There'll be fear, shivering in a box, and then there's another emotion being like, fear! No, we have to think outside the box, not inside it. That's a pretty easy clip for the marketing team to just spam on every social media. I honestly feel like they used all of the most popular idioms in the movie too. They'll probably run out of them by the next one. I think brainstorm and bottling up emotions are the only ones that really worked in this movie. The sarcasm is just stupid. Sure, it gets old so quickly.
What is that? That's a sarcasm! It can open for miles! Run for your life!
Anyway, I don't completely hate this movie, but I have a lot of things to say about it, so let's begin. I like these things, but not enough to watch it again. I liked Anxiety. I loved all the little animation details they added for her, like when she chugs 6 energy drinks at once. She just had this neurotic energy that was just... I just felt it deep in my soul, is all I can say to that. I found it interesting that when she showed up, she already had this intense love for Riley, and I wondered if when new emotions manifested, they're just like, that love is just baked into them. It's not something they learn. But I doubt that's something they would ever explore. I also liked how Anxiety turns Riley's dreams into basically a sweatshop. The metaphor works really well. I thought Joy having control outside of headquarters made a lot more sense than in the first movie. In the first movie, the workers in Riley's mind acted as if Joy getting back to headquarters wasn't a big deal, as though she wasn't that important. But in this one, she's like rallying them, and they listen to her a lot more. I think they lose the plot with the new emotions in this movie, though. Envy just absolutely should not have been there. She did nothing for the whole movie. Ennui was fine, but same thing. I think embarrassment was cute. Of all the new emotions, he had the most reason to help Sadness when she was back in headquarters. In my opinion, I think it should have just been Anxiety and Ennui. Anxiety is inevitable at puberty, being anxious about fitting in with other people or trying to be popular. Ennui could be representative of the ambivalence you get after getting used to the people and environment around you as you grow older. Also, I think it's stupid because you're gonna have 9 emotions for the next movie, and somehow you're going to have all of them controlling Riley's mind, and it's gonna be a complicated mess of dialogue and real life interactions. It was dumb. Anyway, that was all the things I liked. So, what's Riley up to? I think Riley is less of a character in this movie. She serves a very similar function to Andy from Toy Story, where she's not meant to really have a personality, she's just there so we can get into the world that she doesn't see. But Inside Out's different because Riley's mind is connected to her actions in the real world. Andy usually has little impact on the adventures of the toys. I think what bothered me most about this movie is the Riley side of things, which was surprising because I think that's what most people praised about this movie. Her conflict feels very simple compared to the first movie. Here, she just really wants to get into this ice hockey team and is intensely desperate to fit in with them while ignoring her, like, normal friends who she spent the summer with. In the first movie, her leaving home is a really big deal because she obviously isn't thinking straight and is a dumb child who doesn't consider the consequences because she had no hope that things would get better. Her optimism was her own downfall, and in the end, she's able to grapple with the fact that she hasn't properly dealt with the move to San Francisco, or really talked to her parents about it either, and is finally able to do so because joy lets sadness take the lead. It's really beautiful.
I know you don't want me to, but I miss home. I miss Minnesota. You need me to be happy, but
It shows how easy it is to repress your emotions for the sake of people around you and how cathartic it can be to just let go. It's also something a lot of children relate to and aren't able to always deal with well. So as a child, you can watch this and by the end, maybe you'd be able to better articulate how you feel about big decisions your parents make that you can't really control. This movie also feels very tame compared to the first. Riley wants to impress this girl because she's someone she looks up to, and the climax is her getting an anxiety attack from how much pressure she puts on herself to be the best. I also forgot the girl's name, and it will not be said for the rest of this video. So if you want to find out, I guess go to the Inside Out wiki, because that information is not being offered in this video, unfortunately. I think the sole focus being on the hockey camp was their biggest fault here. If this was the start of high school or something, and the stress of exams is weighing on her, as well as ice hockey, as well as trying to impress a cool group of girls, your anxiety is obviously more likely to build up as a result. Putting all their eggs in the hockey camp basket left this movie feeling pretty dry. Most of the movie are these repetitive scenes where Riley is changing how she does something to fit in with this group of girls, ignoring her real friends, then playing a lot of ice hockey and getting frustrated that she's not as good as ice hockey is, like, I don't know, some famous ice hockey player. I'm running low here. It didn't feel like the emotions really learned anything about anxiety either, just that she needs to be moderated or else will flip wildly out of control. And that's true, but there was no real progression. They just hit a wall with how much damage anxiety was doing, and then we're like, oh well. There was little interaction between the other emotions and anxiety until the very end, so it's not like they learned a lesson together about anything. Anxiety was also ruining her mind, but besides the dream world running like a sweatshop, the islands didn't get destroyed like in the first movie or anything. The islands actually don't matter at all in this movie, which really lowered the stakes as well. Riley also has a panic attack about her situation, which is the climax of the movie, but no one from the real world calms her down about it. She just relaxes after and feels better after the emotions do a group hug over her sense of self. No clue why Ennui decided to join. Feels like they didn't do much for the movie and were kind of a dick to everyone. Riley doesn't learn anything about her mental health or how to cope with it, or that her friends even helped her overcome the attack. She's just fine now. Like, I noticed only her friend was the one who noticed Riley was sitting out of the game and hyperventilating, and I thought, oh, she's going to leave and help Riley. And so the lesson is that we need to have a good support system to deal with the negative effects of anxiety, and we have to trust the people around us. But no, not only do her friends not comfort her about the attack, Riley just gets over it on her own. Coming from someone who's had to go to the ER for anxiety attacks is just a garbage message. It fails so badly at discussing mental health. If you're having a panic attack, you need to tell someone. It's not something you can moderate on your own, especially since they can sometimes occur in social settings, and you need to tell someone you trust so you can find some place to calm down. I think Puss in Boots 2 pulled this off with more grace, and that movie isn't even about mental health. Also, Inside Out is very obviously about mental health. I just want to get ahead of it in case I get angry commenters. Every Inside Out movie is about how to have a healthier mind and processing your emotions in a healthy way. I honestly don't think it's even an argument. I think the biggest missed opportunity was fear and anxiety. That would have been a terrifying combination that would have given fear something to do for once, instead of just staying in the background as purple decoration. Fear could have been the real villain who did all the strategizing, while anxiety was the muscle who actually took action. Fear is at the root of anxiety. It's what has us put up barriers and prevents pain later on. So they should have definitely joined forces to protect Riley. Like, I'm amazed they didn't think of this. They have all these emotions and just refuse to center any of them in the narrative besides joy or sadness. I don't know why they're shooting themselves in the foot here. Anger could be a phenomenal villain for a movie as well. I hope they do that later. But he's one of the good original emotions, so we can't possibly risk anything actually interesting for the plot. This movie feels like the first draft of an episode for an Inside Out TV show that got stretched out to a movie length. Or maybe like a third draft with a hasty rewrite. Puberty. For some reason, this movie seems to think that puberty is the exact same experience for girls as it is for boys. The way I can tell the higher-ups hounded the writers for this movie is how little of a role puberty actually plays in it. It's introduced in the beginning as a joke, like, oh, you parents, you have to deal with this moody teenager for the next 10 years, ha ha ha. Are you laughing? Isn't that right, fellow parents? Don't you just hate it when your child gets mood swings? Doesn't that just drive you up a wall? Apparently, the worst thing that can happen to a girl during puberty is that she smells kind of bad now, which, yeah, sure. I get the feeling it's more of a guy problem, though. And most of the times, guys just fix that with Lynx deodorant anyway. But to be honest, Lynx deodorant doesn't fix the problem, much less any problem. The obvious thing that they danced around was periods, which is just so stupid to me. I think talking about that is important because Riley is a girl. Newsflash. But puberty is a different experience for girls, and exploring that is worth something because there are a lot of girls who don't get it explained to them because it's considered a dicey topic when it really isn't. This movie feels like it was written by a group of men who are trying to insert their experiences with puberty into a movie about a teenage girl. There's a female protagonist. Use her to talk about female experiences. Like, this shouldn't even be up for discussion. It's an inevitability. Said that so aggressively. Puberty is also something that happens overnight in the movie, and I thought, oh, since it came overnight, she's going to be really embarrassed, and her mom is going to help her through it, and she's coming to the realization that she's growing up, and maybe that excites or terrifies her. But that didn't happen. They just played it off as a joke. I was disappointed. I wish movies bended to my will like I wanted them to. I'd give every movie a 5-star rating if they did. Alright, next section. My Inside Out 2 story. Get it? Because it's a never mind. This isn't a recollection of my personal experience with this movie or anything. This is just what I think the movie should be. Call it like a fixing the script situation. I'm a doctor here to dissect the elements and give you a better story. First note, I think Riley should be starting middle school or maybe 8th grade. I was expecting Riley to be in high school for this movie, but I understand that the slower she ages, the more sequels can be churned out. During the summer before 8th grade, she grows up normally, has 2 new friends that she's really close with who she met through hockey, just like in this movie. You could have a montage of them doing cute things like having sleepovers, watching the stars, eating pizza outside, going to the cinema or beach, stuff like that. Anything to make San Francisco as a setting more engaging, I guess. Joy could be narrating over it like she normally does. I think this montage is also a good way to show the emotions all working together, like they learned in the last movie. Maybe Riley looks at a plush doll of something looking similar to Bing Bong, and sadness takes over for a bit to gently remind her of him, even though Riley herself doesn't remember why she's sad. They could talk a little about how Riley sees these 2 new best friends, and how much more important Friendship Island is compared to Family Island now. I know they already did that in the movie, but my version will have more time dedicated to it, because I think it's important. You don't mess with a trio of girls at that age. If done well, this could also develop Riley a lot more as a character. We'll see more of her personality come through as well. Like maybe she has trouble putting her foot down, like she's really stubborn or naive. Just anything more than a blank slate can have us connect with her better. I think puberty should start the night before her first day of school starts. Like she's really excited to start the year, be with her friends, to sign up for hockey, stuff like that. And her day is ruined because she has her period and has cramps and can't go to school. This could be also when anxiety is introduced, because anxiety feels like everything is falling apart because she couldn't go to school and takes it as an opportunity to lead everyone. I also think fear should team up with anxiety. It's just the most logical move. He shouldn't have any complaints about everything anxiety is doing. She could then start school and see her friends hanging out with a new girl who's a bit older and really cool who also plays hockey. She might be really bad for the friend group because she's a bit toxic or is just manipulating them into doing bad things, and Riley really wants to join in but doesn't know if she should. Or it could be that this person is someone Riley looks up to and she can't really see the forest for the trees. I think all 3 girls should be involved, not just Riley. It just gives them more to do, just in general. Another important thing Riley could have as a conflict is finding it difficult to balance ice hockey and school. Maybe she's struggling at school and can't keep up, but ice hockey is more important to her. Her friends are a lot better at school than she is, and it heightens her anxiety to work harder at the cost of her mental health. Her teacher also might just be really awful, like a real Miss Godfrey type, so she can't apply herself as much as she wants to. I wonder how many people are going to get that reference. Probably a lot of people. Maybe Big Nate is bigger than I feel it is. This is also a very relatable thing a lot of kids in middle school go through, especially kids who aren't very academically inclined. Or if you don't want Riley to have this arc because you want her to be more of a role model rather than a relatable character, maybe give it to one of her friends and Riley can look on from the outside. She might also be ignoring her parents. Maybe her mother's birthday is something she skips over, and ennui allows her to not care about it, while joy, sadness, disgust, and anger are off in her mind palace trying to get back to headquarters. I think a really good climax for this hypothetical story would be Riley trying to cheat in a very important exam. It's pretty high stakes if it has good build up. It makes sense for her character, and she could have very easily been egged on by this toxic friend of hers. Maybe her friends are helping her study, and despite being somewhat capable to do well in it, she still feels terrified that she'll fail anyway and decides to have a backup. So she ignores her friends and family's requests to help and decides to cheat. The coach's notebook in the original movie is just very unimportant. And also, Riley never gets any consequences for having broken in and read it. It's forgotten immediately, and it's like, okay, I guess if I was a child and want to break into an office and steal a notebook, I should just do that. The movie doesn't disavow Riley for doing this, it's just the story moving along with no consideration for the weight of what the character is actually doing. Riley feels no guilt for this, it's not mentioned again, it's just forgotten as being an event in a series of events. In my version, I think once Riley cheats and gets a perfect score, she realizes that she feels sadness about it and doesn't feel like she earned it. Like she's becoming the person anxiety and fear wanted her to be, but it doesn't make her feel happy or better, it just makes her feel like a fake person. Like she's doing all these shitty things to justify this person that she really wants to be. She wasn't herself or happy with herself. The islands are all probably in tatters by now, or maybe there's one island that is being built taller and higher than the others call the perfect Riley, and it's everything she's pressuring herself to be. Or it could be the growing sense of self into an orange tree that's just taking over headquarters completely, like it's messing up them even being able to control Riley. By now I think Joy and the gang are able to return to headquarters as Riley has panic attack before, let's just say, like the final hockey game starts for the end of the year or semester. Like it's a very important game against a rival team. She starts freaking out about the fact that she cheated in the exam that had been bugging her so much and how she hurt her mother and her friends, and it's all built up to this attack. She sees the toxic friend or role model from before who runs in to see her, but seeing that she's having a panic attack doesn't even try to comfort Riley and just leaves. In the end, the one person whose approval she wanted more than anything wasn't willing to help her in her lowest moment. Then I think either her parents or her friends come in to comfort her, realizing that she's not yet out on the ice. After Riley confesses what she did, they'll come together and support her, telling her they still care about her no matter what. Her parents will obviously be mad, but after seeing everything she's put herself through, their anger will take a backseat as they comfort their daughter. This is when Riley finally feels joy for the first time in a long time, and anxiety and fear realize in horror what they've done to her, and so they decide to take a step back and let all the emotions take control instead, allowing Riley to feel everything but themselves, I guess. Riley feels anger at herself for what she did, joy that her family and friends are comforting her, sadness for having hurt them, disgust at herself for letting things get this far, and yeah, neither Riley can go on to play the hockey game, or maybe she's so overwhelmed that they decide to skip it for her sake and go get pizza or go home as a result and have a sleepover. The movie ends with Riley either having a moment to herself, talking to a mirror, or maybe walking outside to get some fresh air as she finally breathes for the first time that year. Fear and anxiety apologize for everything they've done, and Joy is able to recognize the importance of anxiety, like from the original movie, and says that they should moderate anxiety, but not just that, but that Riley should be happy to be herself, to be bad at things, to love the people around her like they love her. Anxiety and fear shouldn't just come in moderation, but should also recognize they shouldn't do things alone, just like how Riley shouldn't do things alone. There are other ways to motivate Riley instead of believing like she can only work best with them. And then maybe like, I don't know, the perfect Riley island crumbles or something. I don't know. We'll figure something out. Then you could have a montage of Riley dealing with the consequences for cheating. Maybe it turns out the teacher is actually a lot nicer and more forgiving than Riley thought. The toxic friend is moving on to another friend group and being a jerk there. And Riley finally gets a really good score at something in school, and she realizes she also has a passion for this other subject. This will be able to build her world out better and introduce her to another passion instead of just ice hockey again. Like, I think Riley can have more things than ice hockey. It's like a High School Musical.
But you're a playmaker, not a singer, right?
Did you ever think maybe I could be both?
Can be good at more than one thing. It's not a Disney Channel movie. Or I guess Disney Channel movies support the moral in that sense. You know what? Whatever. I'm getting off track. And then you can have the old jokes about looking into other people's heads and seeing the emotions freaking out as usual in the extra credit scene. And yeah, that's my Inside Out 2 story. So about an ending section, let's just move on to the next thing. So, the finale, my final thoughts. So yeah, I think I'm never going to watch this movie again. I think I'll watch bits and bobs for this video because I think I got some details wrong, but overall I'm good. I think this movie is a lot worse than Turning Red, to be honest, which I believe some will find to be a controversial statement. These two movies are often compared because they're both about a young girl character going through puberty, but to me it's no contest. Turning Red is far better. Inside Out 2 just has no personality. It reminds me so much of Wreck-It Ralph 2. Turning Red clearly had so much more fun directing and interesting ideas. It can be argued that that movie was a bit cringy and repetitive, but it was clearly personal, and everyone involved put a lot into it.
The inspiration behind Turning Red comes from my own life growing up as a dorky Chinese-Canadian girl in Toronto, Canada. It really taps into that awkward, cringy time in all of our lives when we were 13, when everything in our lives were changing.
Whoa, what is that? Some of the craziest moments in the film are based on things that have happened to Domi.
Report you for trespassing! It's Mommy!
Except, of course, for the giant furry red panda.
For Asian watchers, it was a really beautiful and cathartic because generational trauma is not often explored in big movies like this. For people who aren't Asian, that movie is considered caricaturistic, which makes no sense to me because Pixar has always been a bit out there with their ideas. Like, why is it easier for you to relate to a rat that cooks food or a plastic cowboy than a Chinese girl just living her life in Toronto? I'm not the greatest fan of Turning Red. I think it has some bad writing and a few narrative problems, but nothing that would make it ridiculous to compare it to, say, something like Finding Nemo or Up or Bug's Life, you know? But that's always what feels like is the consensus with it, that it's lower or worthy of less praise than other Pixar movies. I legitimately think that Inside Out 2 has been the worst out of any Pixar output in recent years. It's so obviously passionless. I just can't believe people don't see it.
In a full theater, it's so moving. I laughed in my audition and in my first session and in my second session.
The popularity of this movie worries me because I think it will lead to Pixar believing that personal cultural stories aren't worth telling anymore, which is frustrating that we got this far just for the company to decide it's not safe enough to allow these creators to share their stories. Luca and Turning Red were movies that strayed away from the regular plot structure of Pixar films. The characters had goals, but they were very simple and didn't push them into intense climaxes. They were kind of ridiculous and hard to take seriously, and I think that's fine, but it means that it's up to the audience on how willing they are to engage with them as a result. Turning Red was a personal story where it was clear that the relationship between May and the people around her were the main focus. Her being able to fully express herself in spite of all her weirdness and hormones. But if you're not interested in that, you can complain about how inconsistent the red panda curse is, or how cringy the twerking or the drawing scene was, or how it didn't mention 9/11, and how objectively it was bad, but I guess some people like it. Personal stories, real personal stories, are ones that will confront the audience through their expression. They will challenge norms and not stick to a predetermined formula. They will unearth experiences that you'll never know about otherwise. Creators are giving something to you about their childhood, their life, a piece of themselves. And regardless of whether you take it or not, just learning about it will affect you in some way. And I think that's beautiful. Inside Out 2 doesn't offer anything personal in that sense. It reminds you, in a whisper, that anxiety exists and is something people must deal with. Its messaging is so shallow that it might as well just be a quote at the end of a Barbie movie. Just be yourself. It's the safest Pixar has been in a long time, but the fact it's the most popular in recent memory really worries me. It will be sequel after sequel until people stop making videos about the downfall of Pixar because of movies like Luca and Turning Red. I think it would take about $5 for me to watch this again. I would like to be paid $5 if I had to watch the whole thing again. I'll have that as my rating scale, actually, for every movie or piece of media from now on. If I like the movie, I'll pay it a certain amount of money, and if I don't like it, someone has to pay me a certain amount of money. So this movie is worth $5, is worth -$5. Yeah. I rate Inside Out 2 -$5. So there. I'm literally doing this right after I record the video, but I just realized as I was listening back to the My Inside Out 2 story part, I was like, the climax could be Riley cheating, but I think a better climax would be her failing the exam. Just because she just wasn't good at it. Like, she just couldn't apply the information that she got. Or, like, she had, like, a panic attack during the exam or something. I think that's more interesting because in the first movie, she made an intentionally stupid choice. And, like, in this movie, or my hypothetical version of this movie, she, like, it was something she couldn't fully control. Like, even though she studied really hard, it was, like, just, it wasn't working for her or something. I feel like that would make her more sympathetic if she just failed the exam and couldn't control it. Anyway, yeah, I felt like I needed to tell that because it was really bugging me as I was listening back to that section. Alternative ending. Yeah. Whoa.